Your teacher assigns you to analyze a speech. You find a simile. You write. The author uses a simile to make his point more vivid and interesting. And you wonder when you get your grade back, why it's a C+. Here's the problem. You're treating similes like ornaments or decorations instead of precision tools that have a specific purpose in an argument. Hi, I'm Dr. Clay Zuba, inventor of Zubify. Today, I'm going to show you a way of understanding similes that will allow you to understand and write about any simile you ever see in your whole life, ever. What? Yes. In part 1 of this series, I taught you how to recognize and identify the parts of metaphors and similes. I'll review them for you here, but to go deeper into these definitions, make sure you've watched part 1 of writing about similes and metaphors, which I'll link for you below. All metaphors and similes are composed of 2 parts: the tenor, which is the thing being described, and the vehicle, which is what you're comparing it to. The magic happens in 2 other places. One of these is the ground, which is the values that are transferred from the vehicle to the tenor through the comparison. For example, if you said a lawyer is a shark or a lawyer is like a shark, qualities are transferred from the shark to the lawyer. The lawyer is just a guy who goes to courts and knows the law, but a shark is a predator that hurts people and other animals. The metaphor implies then that you cannot trust a lawyer. The other area where the magic happens is in the tension. This is the distance between the vehicle and the tenor, the difference in qualities between the lawyer and the shark. In this case, in our culture, a lot of times people don't like lawyers, so the distance is not that high and the tension is kind of right. It makes the metaphor work. If the tension is high, however, it can make the simile or metaphor especially shocking or surprising, which may or may not make it difficult to make it work. Now, the poetry metaphor that we looked at in part 1 of our series changed our understanding of beauty, but the simile that we're going to analyze today changed minds. Let's see how. Our second example is a simile. It comes from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech from 1963. You might be familiar with it because it's pretty famous. As King says to his audience of mostly African-American people who were participating in his March on Washington, "We are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." You're probably feeling an immediate emotion of inspiration and power from this metaphor, but let's walk through it to see how it works. Here the tenor is justice and righteousness. The vehicle is the water of a mighty stream. When I think about the ground, I think about the way that a mighty stream is a powerful force of nature that can clean out a riverbed. It can clean out a riverbed full of sticks and branches and detritus and all kinds of junk and leave it bare and new for a new beginning. Therefore, in this metaphor, the vehicle becomes a symbol for the unstoppable cleansing water of a river that sweeps away everything before it and leaves a clean riverbed. When I think about the purpose here, the purpose of this metaphor is to defy the stance of Americans who think that racism is both a part of the natural order and something that can be preserved. For King's listeners, this metaphor then portrays the racial justice of the civil rights movement as part of a natural order and an unstoppable and irresistible force. Yes. And there's a little bit of tension here because we wouldn't often think of something abstract like justice as civil rights as something that can have unstoppable force. This creates a lot of the power and persuasive force of the metaphor. Finally, I would write it out. You can see how, once again, writing about it took a great deal more space than just the space that it took King to say it. So if you're my student and I tell you that you need to elaborate on your thinking when you're describing a metaphor or simile, and you tell me how can I elaborate more when all that sentence was just one sentence by the speaker, I'm going to show you that it can be a lot of lines in your essay. You can see the way in my writing here, I'm introducing this speech as well as the speaker and the context, just in case it's not already introduced in your essay. Here you can see that I'm just identifying the tenor of justice and righteousness. I'm identifying the vehicle as the unstoppable body of water. I'm identifying then the ground of a physical force. He uses that to show a moral idea. I'm showing the tension here when I talk about the clash between the slow, stagnant nature of bureaucracy and law and the dynamic, cleansing movement of a river that inspires listeners. Here I'm talking about the purpose. The simile implies that the civil rights movement's momentum is natural and inevitable as a flowing river, in the same way that a mighty river washes away all the debris and detritus in its path. The detritus and debris here is symbolic of the dirt of the racism and corruption in America. The simile persuades listeners that the quest for justice is a force in nature that cannot be stopped, depicting a future racial equality in America as inevitable. I've now walked you through two examples that identify and show you how you can think and write about both metaphors and similes. Yes! I wanted to close by just talking about the difference between a metaphor and a simile here. A metaphor, of course, creates equivalence between the two object compares, and the simile uses the word like. In a way, then, a simile puts a little bit of distance between the vehicle and the tenor, and a metaphor kind of smushes them, so they become exactly the same thing in terms of persuasion and in terms of writing and thinking in the reader's head. And you might think about then why the speaker and writer is using a metaphor instead of a simile, or vice versa. Here for King, I think that creating a little bit of distance between his vehicle and tenor is purposeful, because I think that he knows that he is communicating really revolutionary ideas, and if he just says that justice and righteousness are an unstoppable river, that might make some people feel threatened, especially people who feel attached to American traditions that kind of secretly involve racism, and understand that it's baked into the social order. They might feel uncomfortable with the idea of upsetting that social order. Therefore, using the word like might make them feel a little bit more comfortable with the idea of racial change and justice than they might be if he made it a metaphor. And if you want to write about a metaphor or simile in even more detail, you can use your understanding of why the writer chose a simile versus a metaphor. I hope this video has helped you see the way that writing and thinking about metaphors can actually help you understand and interpret them, and the way that writing and thinking and reading about literary devices are not mutually exclusive tasks. They operate together and can reinforce one another. Remember, if you're writing about a metaphor or simile, you have to follow 5 steps. 1 is identify the parts. 2, ask questions about the parts. 3, think about the qualities that are being transferred from vehicle to tenor and the purpose of doing so. 4, what the purpose of transferring these qualities is in the literary work overall. And 5, of course, is just writing all your thinking out. Every time you have to write about a literary work now, whether it is nonfiction or poetry, you always have something to write about because you know how to write about metaphors and similes. Yes! Thanks for watching Zubify. Come back for more Zubify.